Dude, welcome back to the Accelerator program. I'm super excited to jump into this session because we're going to be running through something called macro mastery. But during our last session where we focus on mindset and actually setting the tone for the program, that was super sick. But today we're actually going to run through some practical tips to massively improve your nutrition. So let's jump into it, man. First and foremost, I want to give you a clear understanding of the three essential macronutrients in your diet: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. But before we jump into that, I just want you to think about what you constitute as a healthy diet. What does healthy eating mean to you? Because you are very much your own individual, and what you eat on a daily basis may be completely different to somebody else's. But hopefully these practical tips will allow you to ingrain and sort of structure your nutrition around what's going to be best for you. So the first macronutrient that we need to take a look at is going to be protein, because protein is the key to building muscle. It contains 4 kilocalories per gram, and it's a highly thermogenic macronutrient. So what that means is it takes a lot of energy to digest it, to process it, and to metabolize it. So if you are someone that's looking to drop body fat or build muscle, I would most definitely prioritize this macronutrient within your diet, because without adequate protein, your hard work in the gym, well, it's going to go to waste. And it's all come down to the 20 amino acids that we can find inside of protein. Now, there are 10 that are produced in the body and also 10 that are not produced in the body. But you can see on the left hand side, we got glycine, we got alanine, we got valine, we got leucine, we got isoleucine, we got proline, and so on. They all code for specific functions within the body. Now, generally speaking, animal sources will have a full amino acid profile. So we're looking at lean meats such as chicken, turkey, beef, fish and seafood, eggs, and dairy products. A complete amino acid profile are essentially those essential amino acids that the body needs. Whereas plant-based proteins, they don't necessarily contain the full amino acid profile. So they might have a few of those 20 amino acids, but not all of them to make it a complete protein. But that being said, lentils and beans are a very good example, tofu and tempeh, and then quinoa and also chickpeas as well. So is it bad to have a plant-based protein diet? Most definitely not, but it just means that having those incomplete protein structures could potentially impact specific functions within the body. So I would have a combination of both, but of course, if you are vegan or if you are vegetarian, then these are the second best alternative. I would always focus on animal sources and specifically lean meats that you can include within your diet. Now, depending on your body weight, that will also depend on how much protein you have. So a general range is 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. So an 80 kg person needs around 130 to 175 grams of protein per day. That's a general rule of thumb. What I like to program is a little bit higher in protein, because then it's going to contribute towards satiety. So that means feelings of fullness when it comes to dieting and our overall strategy when it comes to dropping body fat. But if you work in pounds, I would say anywhere between 0.8 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight is going to be sufficient. Looking at carbohydrates, they also contain 4 kilocalories per gram. And as you can see there, they are the primary energy source. Essentially, when you consume any sort of carbohydrate, it gets digested and it gets processed and it gets metabolized into this tiny molecule called glucose. And glucose needs to get into your muscles to be able to perform at the highest standard. And the way I like to sort of teach this is, if you are based in the UK or if you're outside the UK, you probably know of our city called London. And London has the London Tube Network. So those barriers are our arteries, our veins, our capillaries, and those trains travel across the network every single day. Now, we have passengers such as oxygen, vitamins, minerals, cholesterol, catecholamines, and most importantly, glucose, and they need to be able to get on those trains and get to the correct destination. So that being said, if you don't have sufficient carbohydrate getting onto those trains, our arteries, our veins, our capillaries, well, you're going to have low energy and they're not going to get to the correct destination, much like oxygen or even vitamins. And that's a big one when I see people diet, is that they follow this restricted meal plan and they don't get those essential vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients into their diet. So that being said, we want to make sure that our barriers, they're called GLUT4 transporter barriers, are open so that we can get as many passengers as we can, glucose or other passengers, onto those trains and get them to the correct train destination, which is our muscle cells. Now, we can look at quality sources. So we want to focus on whole grains, things like brown rice, brown pasta, oats, quinoa, even fruits and vegetables as well. 5 a day does keep the doctor away. I would aim for 2 fruit and 3 veg, and even legumes for sustained energy and better recovery. In terms of performance impact, too few carbohydrates can deplete glycogen. Now, glycogen is basically stored glucose. So the way that we can use an analogy around this is, I want you to imagine that you get paid every single month. For simple mathematics, let's say you just get paid £1,000, right? And you spend £500 every single month, and then you put £500 away in the bank, and it's going to increase interest. That money in the bank is the same as glycogen. We dip in it, we dip out of it when and as needed. Therefore, we can store glycogen, or our money, in the liver and in the muscle. So when you're resistance training, we actually dip into those stored glycogen. We break it down into glucose, and that's called glycogenolysis. But essentially, if you didn't have enough carbohydrates in your diet, so you follow a ketogenic diet, well, it's going to lead to reduced training intensity, poor recovery, and also potential muscle loss as well. So when I asked you what do you constitute as a healthy diet, also think about what do you constitute as a balanced diet. Is it quarter carbohydrate represented as a palm size, a quarter protein also represented as a palm size, and then half vegetables represented as your 8 fingers. Now, looking at fat loss, you don't actually need to eliminate carbohydrates for fat loss. What you might see is a massive drop in scale weight, and I'll be real with you, it's great for marketing purposes because you could say X client has dropped 6 kilos in like 2 weeks. It's water. It's water, I'm afraid, and it's water from the extracellular space, which is the blood. So that being said, if you include carbohydrates in your diet, it's going to be slow, it's going to be sustainable, you have that energy, but you can also perform to your highest standard because glucose and specifically carbohydrates are used for a variety of different functions in the body, not just for resistance training. We move on to fats. Fats are an energy-dense macromolecule. They contain 9 kilocalories per gram. And a lot of people think that fat in the diet is fattening in itself. It's most definitely not. And we can break them down into 3 types of dietary fat. The first one is saturated fats, which are generally solid at room temperature. We can see examples there like butter, cheese, red meat, but the only exception are actually tropical oils, such as coconut oil or even palm oil. They contain roughly 85% saturated fat. So we would say that we'd have them in moderation. It's almost like Goldilocks on 3 bears, too hot, too cold, just right. I would say that on a traffic light scale, this is amber. We have them in moderation, but if we have them too much, we're going to raise our bad blood cholesterol, which is defined as low density lipoprotein cholesterol. Now, we teach this in a little bit more depth inside of Fit Coach Pro, and we use an analogy called the castle and the wall analogy. So if you would that analogy to further break down low density lipoprotein cholesterol or high density lipoprotein cholesterol and the 3 different types of dietary fat, just comment in the school section, castle and wall, and I'll send you over that training for free. We then have unsaturated fats. These are known as healthy fats, and we can put them into 2 categories or subcategories. First one is monounsaturated fats. So things like olive oil, avocados, nuts, seeds, even oily fish as well. When we look at polyunsaturated fats, they are going to lower your bad blood cholesterol and increase your good blood cholesterol. So good blood cholesterol is high density lipoprotein cholesterol. With polyunsaturated fats, you might have heard of things like omega-3 if you go to your local supermarket or if you go to a pharmacy. These are omega-3, omega-6 fats, which your body cannot make. Therefore, you need them in your diet, whether you're taking a capsule or you do consume like fatty fish, flax seeds, walnuts, chia seeds. They're going to be great for your brain and also for your heart health, as well as reducing inflammation. Omega-6, these are things like vegetable oils like sunflower oil, safflower oil, and even corn oil as well, but we need to balance with the omega-3 intake. And then finally, we got trans fats. So trans fats or partially hydrogenated oils. I appreciate I haven't put that there, but you might see that on the back of any sort of packaging when you do buy a product at the supermarket. These are found in baked goods. So things like cakes, biscuits, chocolates, sweets. They can raise your bad blood cholesterol, so low density lipoprotein cholesterol, and lower your good cholesterol, your high density lipoprotein cholesterol, increasing the risk of heart disease. So things like stroke, heart attack, angina. We want to avoid them completely, but I appreciate that you may go to events or you may have to have some sort of freezer food from time to time. That would be a red on the traffic light label reading system, or if we look at unsaturated fats, that would be a green, and then saturated fats, that would be an amber. So in short, we want to prioritize unsaturated fats, and we can give examples on the right there. Limit trans fats or partially, I might even just put that in there, partially hydrogenated oils, or processed oils or fried foods and processed meats. Now, looking at calories, the big picture almost looks like the Olympic rings, right? But in short, if we want to drop body fat, we need to calculate our maintenance and then subtract 300 to 500 calories from your maintenance. Maintenance is where you are 100% crystal clear on what you should be eating to maintain your body weight. And then for muscle building, we want to be roughly 200 to 400 calories above your maintenance per day. And if you did want to look at the statistics, for fat loss, it's a 10 to 20% deficit. For maintenance, it will be 0%. And then for muscle gain, it's a 10 to 15% surplus to prevent you putting on a lot of body fat. And I get that for a lot of guys, they think about dirty bulking or they think about as eating as many calories as possible. Trust me when I say this, the muscle to fat ratio, you will gain probably a significant amount of body fat compared to muscle, especially if you are a natural. So I want you to think of calories as the container size and macros as what fills the container. Both quantity and quality matter for optimal results. So if we're looking at carbohydrates, please choose starchy carbohydrates. Please don't just opt for high glycemic index carbohydrates. These are things like sugary carbohydrates, like an apple juice, just to get your calories in. Instead, I want you to focus on balanced meals that are satiating and are going to give you sustained energy rather than spikes and drops in your overall blood glucose. So how do we actually track without stress? There's a couple of things that we can do. We can look at MyFitnessPal or even Chronometer for digital tracking. Use a banking app every single month to track your finances. So you need to be doing that for your calories as well. You can look at Food Scale for initial portion education. So the Food Scale itself is actually tied into hand portions. So if we're looking at protein, it's going to be a palm size. If we're looking at carbohydrates, it's also going to be a palm size. If we're looking at vegetables, it's going to be your 8 fingers. And whilst I've not included it there, fats, whether it's like olive oil, rapeseed oil, they're my 2 favorite cooking oils. It's going to be roughly a thumb size. If you're not tracking your calories, your carbs, your proteins, your fats, that will give you a general indication of how to build a balanced meal. But like I've put there, you need to focus on consistency, not perfection. Missing a meal is not going to derail your progress, but like I said in the first training, consistent habits are going to create lasting results. So that comes to the end of this training. Practical tips and next steps. Number 1, I want you to build your meals strategically. So I want you to start with protein and then add carbs and then add fats to hit your goals. So it could be an example, lean cut chicken breast. It could be a jacket potato. And in terms of your fat, if you cook that chicken breast in a pan, you could have rapeseed oil or even olive oil, or you can even have some avocado. If it's breakfast, it could be like eggs, avocado, and even like some brown bread or whole grain bread or even sourdough bread. This ensures you prioritize muscle building nutrients first. by all means, and every single meal, protein is the focus. Number 2, plan and prep. So dedicated time for meal preparation. So what I like to do is every single Friday, I'll sit down, I'll write out sort of my meal plan and even the ingredients that I need to go get from the supermarket. On the Saturday, I'll go to the supermarket in the morning. Why? Because the majority of people from the night before are hungover, and usually that's when they stock up new produce. They get deliveries in on the weekend ready for Monday. And then Sunday, that's when I will batch cook every single meal from Monday to Sunday. So I know exactly how many meals I'm having, what's in those meals, the calories, the carbs, the proteins, and the fats. Number 3, track progress. So we want to take weekly photos, measurements, and note your strength gains alongside your dietary intake. So if you feel as though you're not making as much progress when it comes to dropping body fat, maybe you can subtract 100 to 200 calories on a weekly basis. But to begin with, it needs to be 300 to 500 calories pulled from your maintenance. And finally, be patient, man. Your body is going to adapt gradually. When we diet or when we go through a muscle building phase, your body sees this as like a fight or flight response. You may have heard of that term, but it's almost stress in the body and it doesn't really like change. But you need to trust the process and you need to make consistent macro adjustments, which are going to lead to more sustainable results rather than just removing all of the food and drink that you enjoy. Trust me when I say this, the chances of you maintaining that long term are going to be super slim. So whilst it might be great that you're pulling all of this weight off, guess what? Afterwards, you've not actually learned anything about yourself, you haven't got any habits ingrained, and you will go back to the person that you were before. I want you to remember that nutrition is both science and practice, because you are your own individual. As your body changes, your macro needs will evolve. You need to make changes on a bi-weekly basis and be willing to adjust while maintaining the fundamental principles of macro mastery. Catch you in the next training.